This morning I've come up into the hills of the Isle of Man to shoot a beautiful collection of old ruined buildings that I've never photographed before. They're situated in a really scenic spot. You can see a few just behind me here, and I think they hold an awful lot of potential. And weather-wise, things look to be aligning this morning. We've got nice patches of clear sky, which is hopefully going to let some sunlight through at sunrise and illuminate these beautiful old ruins. But we've also got really dynamic clouds and mist that are swirling round the hills that you can see just behind me here. So all the ingredients are there. I just have to keep my fingers crossed that it all comes together for me. This morning is turning into one of those mornings where all the conditions are just incredible, and in many ways I'm spoilt for choice with what I can shoot here. And to be honest, I'm struggling. I feel overwhelmed, I really do. You can see just behind me here a cloud inversion has actually formed in this valley, and it looks incredible. It's just swirling round the woodland and the plantations you can see behind me. There's also some ruins the far side of the valley here, and it just looks fantastic swirling around those ruined buildings there. It looks amazing, and it's kind of traveling a bit like a conveyor belt down the valley. So I did think maybe I should throw on a 10-stop filter here and try and smooth out that mist and capture the movement of it. But I tried it and it didn't quite look right, so I'm actually just going for a standard exposure here, because I like the way the mist is interacting with the trees and the ruins the other side of the valley, and that gets lost a little bit if I smooth that out with a really long exposure. The mist is already starting to go, so I think the best of it is gone. The light hasn't yet arrived, but temperature must be increasing, and this is just rapidly disappearing behind me. The valley here was very full of mist about 5 minutes ago, and yeah, looks pretty empty now. But the composition is focused down on this foreground here, so you can see this is the remnants of an old ruined building, and you've got these dual windows. You've got window 1 and then you've got window 2 just there, and they look straight down this valley here, and I just think they're really eye-catching. So this building and those dual windows kind of forms the foreground of the composition, and you can see the mist is just forming up in these plantations and then just moving down here. And then also at the top of the scene, you can't really see it here, the clouds in the sky are starting to catch the rising sun over in this direction, so we're getting some nice shades in those as well. So I think this has got all the ingredients for a really nice shot, and it's completely unplanned and unexpected. I had my mind set on some different images that hopefully will still work. So the composition I actually came here for this morning is right behind me until I got distracted by all that gorgeous mist. This behind me is exactly what I came here for, and I scouted this probably about a year ago, took a little snap on my mobile phone, logged it in the old noggin, and I knew it was worth coming back for at this time of year. And the reason being is the sun rises just behind this mountain peak here, and I think it'll work really well with the scene behind me. So it's this building here which is really grabbing my attention, and I love this solitary doorway and all the rubble that's kind of strewn across the foreground in front of it, and I like the way it's angled into the valley with the mountain just sitting behind it. I think there's a lot of potential here, particularly with a sunrise just there. And I took a very similar image actually about 6 weeks ago, maybe a bit longer, just over there, and it really worked very well at the ruins just over there. So I think a similar thing could work here, but I am a little bit worried about when the light is going to arrive here, because I don't know if you noticed, it's already over that side of the valley, so it can't be very far away at all. And also the hills down there are starting to catch a little bit as well. Now, according to PhotoPills, which is an app that I use extensively, the sun is going to almost follow the contours of the land up here, and it should actually rise probably up about here, about 9:30 to 10 this morning. But it's going to be touch and go, because it's literally just below the horizon there. If I just stop you down, you might be able to see that a little bit more clearly behind me. It's very, very close. But we've got this really, really gorgeous clouds just catching the light up there as well. So I'm kind of thinking if we can get the sun coming over there soon, this could look fantastic with the sun breaking and illuminating the scene there, and then just these gorgeous clouds catching the light at the top. It's really got all the ingredients for a winning shot. But some of these variables are totally out of my control. So I've just got to sit here, be ready to strike when the opportunity comes. So our light is really, really close now, starting to catch that bit of the valley as well and the tops of the trees there. And I think when it arrives, it's going to arrive very, very quickly, because we're on the same sort of altitude as that bit of the valley. We're just a little bit closer to the mountain, so it's going to be slightly delayed, but I think it's going to arrive very, very imminently. It's quite exciting, but it's also quite nerve-wracking, because I know shots like this from experience, you only get a very, very finite window of time to get the shot in the bag, and the sun will very, very quickly, as it crests over that horizon line, it will very, very quickly get too harsh, and yeah, that shooting opportunity is just going to be absolutely tiny. So I've got to be absolutely on it, otherwise the shot is going to escape me here. Light, and I'm fairly confident I managed to get the shot in the bag there. My shooting window was very, very narrow indeed, but I'm fairly confident. And the light was a little bit harsher than I would have liked, but there's nothing I can do about that. By the time the sun crested over the top of that mountain there, probably the best of golden hour was probably behind us, but you just got to work with what you're given in circumstances like this. And I think the shot still looks pretty good. Particularly liked how down in the foreground here, these boulders are covered in a coating of morning dew, and they really captured the light and the colours of the sun really quite beautifully. So I'm really pleased how that's turned out. There's a lot of cloud action in the sky as well, so we did get some clouds towards the top of the scene that have added a little bit more interest. You can see that the sun is going in and out behind the clouds behind me now, so I think that's a nice added touch, and just adds a little bit more interest in that part of the scene. It was a really difficult shot to capture though, and the reason for that is essentially the dynamic range of this shot is very, very vast indeed. So essentially I took the following approach. I split the image into two halves. I focused down on the foreground and then I focused on the background. Well, I actually did it the other way around, but you know what I mean. And the reason for that was twofold. Firstly, I couldn't get all of this sharp in one exposure. These foreground boulders just down here are a metre away from the camera, 1.5 meters. They're very, very close indeed, whereas the mountain out there is out in infinity. So by splitting my image into two, I can then blend them together to focus stack to give me that great sharpness from front to back. But also it allows me to dial in the exposure to get the best from the respective parts of the scene. So down in the foreground here, I can expose properly for the foreground and make sure I'm not clipping the shadows in this part of the actual composition. And then in my background there, I can expose better for the highlights to control the sun there. And I actually did some bracketing. I did 2-stop and 1-stop underexposure bracketing there, just to give me that sort of nice comfort blanket. I'm not sure which I'll use in post, probably 2-stop under, but I'm not sure. But that helps me to control the highlights in that part of the scene, and using exposure blending in post, I'll be able to actually put that all together really quite nicely. Also, on the backdrop image, I used a narrower aperture of f/18 to render a sun star as the sun crested over that horizon line, whereas down on the foreground here I used a wider aperture of f/11 to give me better sharpness. So I can get the best of both worlds with that approach. Settings wise, the rest of my settings were it was taken at 26mm, I believe, ISO 64, and shutter speed wise I've got absolutely no idea. I was changing it constantly. The light levels are all over the place, and it really does not matter. No filters are all needed for this, and yeah, I'm pretty satisfied. It's been a really nice morning, and I think the shot has come together exactly how I painted it in my mind.